I wanted to share my testimony about God saving me.
Well, this really isn't a testimony show, so if you can kind of keep it brief. I mean, there's a ton of Christian shows you can call to present your testimony. I'd actually, we're more interested in what you believe and why.
Oh, okay, I can do that.
Okay.
When I was younger, I really didn't know anything about God as a small kid or anything like that. Like, I heard of him, but nobody actually taught me anything about him. And then one day, because I was like a very depressed teen, I didn't have any friends or anything. And what happened to me was, oh my God, okay, I got to turn the TV off. I'm looking at myself. I'm sorry.
You're looking at yourself on the TV? You're not even on TV.
I meant my name.
Oh.
I'm hearing myself. That was distracting me.
Okay.
What happened to me was I didn't really have anyone. My family wasn't really religious or anything. And then one day I was watching TV, and there was this pastor on TV, and I wasn't really like paying attention to him because I didn't really understand what he was saying. But the only part I understood was God loves you and wants to get to know you. And me never having a father that like really spoke to me. So there was this Bible that I found in some totes and everything in my house, and I started reading it. And I would ask my mom about the Bible, and she's like, I have no idea. That's not even mine. That's for grandmother's. And I'm like, okay. And I had no one to tell me what the Bible meant. And so what happened to me was I spent every single day reading the Bible. I was 14, reading the Bible all by myself. I had no one to teach me what the Bible meant. And every day I kept praying over and over and over for understanding of the Bible. And within 2 months, I learned a lot more than grown-ups do within 2 years of the Bible, because I truly feel like the Holy Spirit was teaching me himself.
And
I was too young.
So first of all, I don't know how much grown-ups learn in 2 years, but it wouldn't surprise me that somebody who spent a couple months reading the Bible would know more about the Bible than most people in church, because most people in church don't spend that much time actually reading and studying their Bible.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. I mean, you do have a point, and to a certain extent, but I also believe that a teacher is also required to help you, understand.
Okay.
How things work. Yeah.
The thing is, you're still telling me what you believe, and I want to know why. Because first of all, I agree that being taught something is useful. I also know that people can learn things on their own, certain things and certain skills. But at the end of the day, your argument is that you learned true things about the Bible, and that the best explanation for that is that you had to have been taught. You couldn't have come to a correct understanding on your own. And so you believe it was the Holy Spirit who was teaching you, right?
Yeah, since I had nobody else.
So the first question I would ask is, how do you know that what you understand is correct?
Well, 2 years after that, when I finally decided to go to church, I went to my very first youth class, and it was on the day that they were doing a review of everything they learned, like a recap. No, not a recap. Yeah, like where like they read their Bible for like the whole week, and then the next week after that they do a review and say, what did you learn from this and what did you learn from that? And I came in when he was asking questions, not when we weren't like actually reading the Bible. He had questions already up on the board, and I wasn't there when they were studying the Bible or anything. So, and every time he asked a question, nobody but me would answer them because they didn't know. And every single time he asked, I gave him the correct answer.
How do you know the answer was correct?
Because he told me I was correct after.
How do you know he was correct?
Well, I would assume that since he is a youth leader and he's studying the Bible and he knows what he's talking about is correct. I've been told by plenty of pastors and youth group leaders and friends and everything from church that I'm wise beyond my years and I know a lot of stuff when no one's actually taught me.
That's what I was told too.
Yeah.
Let me ask you this. Do you feel like you have a pretty commanding knowledge of the Bible?
About Jesus Christ and a couple of other things, yet mainly the book of Revelations and the story of Jesus Christ.
Okay.
Those are the two of them that I used to study growing up as a kid.
So you do realize that the book of Revelation almost didn't even make the Bible because it makes no sense.
I do listen to Bart Ehrman. Is that how you say his last name?
Bart Ehrman?
Yeah, him. And Mike Lacona. They're really good historians. I like listening to both sides because I used to question my faith too. Because I used to be like, I don't see God, I don't hear Him, things like that. If I couldn't use my five senses, then He wasn't there. I used to believe that.
Can I back you up? Hang on. Let me back you up just a second. So
okay.
you know some about Jesus, and you have studied the book of Revelation. But you realize that the entire Jesus story is propped up on the notion of original sin, which begins back at Genesis, the first and second chapters.
Can you repeat that?
The entire Jesus narrative, the reason Jesus had to come to earth to die for the sins of humankind and be the atonement for us, the sacrificial lamb. All of that is predicated upon the story in the Old Testament in Genesis, arguably the most recognizable book in the most recognizable book in the world, Genesis. Who wrote the book of Genesis?
Let's see, which one? Oh, Moses, I think it was.
How do you know that?
My knowledge is correct. You mean like if because of the Bible says it or because that's...
How do you know? Like Dr. Bart Ehrman wrote his books, right? Because he's there to verify authorship. There's a tremendous amount of documentation around the publication of that book that just lets us know for sure this is his material. How do you know Moses wrote the book of Genesis? How'd you get there?
Well, I use faith, and I've also listened to, because historians, because there are billions of people on this planet that have died, and unless they had written documents about them, we wouldn't even know they existed. And like
Moses.
Off topic.
Exactly. We have no evidence that Moses was even a real person. And I'm pretty much convinced that Moses wasn't a real person. It reads like a mythic hero.
Mm-hmm.
The story of being cast aside in the water and then rescued from the water and raised in the land that was oppressing his people and all this. It's a great, narrative, but I have no reason to believe that it's true, and I believe no reason to believe that he wrote anything. But even if I knew for sure who wrote Genesis, and I knew for sure it was Moses, what does that get me?
And if you take it on faith that Moses wrote the book of Genesis, what if someone who believed in one of the Hindu texts or who came to you about the Quran and said they took the authorship of the Quran on faith? Would you accept their faith as much as you accept your own?
I used to read about these different religions, and I would read about all these people who claim to say why they're not real. And the thing is, some people just, because I read these books that...
And let me come back to my question. I don't mean to interrupt you, but if someone came to you with a faith claim for another deity, prophet, holy book religion, and they were just as convinced as you, and they took it on faith, would you give them as much credence as you give yourself in regard to Moses and the book of Genesis?
It's going to sound kind of weird, but I would believe that they did have something, but it's not of God. I would say it's probably a demon lying to them.
Well, they might say that about you. I mean, how would you know that maybe you weren't hearing a demon in your head?
So I have no reason to think that either of you are hearing a demon, because I don't begin with the presumption that demons and gods are real. But so you're making a claim, a faith-based claim on behalf of your religion, and here's somebody else making a faith-based claim on behalf of another religion, and here's somebody else making a faith-based claim on behalf of another religion. And you're looking at it as, oh, I believe that they've got something, but it's a demon. And Seth and I are saying, faith is not a way to get to the truth. There is literally no position that one could hold that you couldn't base on faith. I could believe that men are smarter than women, that white people are better than black people, that I could believe any of those things, and when asked why, I could say, I just take it on faith.
I just know.
Well, what I've done is I have watched plenty of documentaries. I know you commented on this video, patterns of evidence, and I
have a video about that.
I have, and then like when Bart said go through the New Testament and look at all the different disciples, how their certain things contradict each other. And I will be I know you probably hear a lot of Christians say there are no contradictions in the Bible. That's stupid. Of course there's contradictions in the Bible. But there, to me, they kind of like forget which ones, but in one of them it says Jesus, when he was crucified, they put a purple robe on him, and the other one it said they put a scarlet robe on him. That is a contradiction. Point being, it was a robe. We can't expect them to remember the exact same color what it was. And throughout the Bible, you see things that do not add up. Some things are a big problem, and some things are very minor.
I actually agree with the last three sentences that you just said. There are a lot of things in the Bible that just don't add up.
So we're back to the beginning. You are unfortunately a lonely, depressed 14-year-old. You discover the Bible, you spend a lot of time reading it, you find that you understand it, you find some comfort there, you wind up in church, and you find out that they've been reading it as well, and the guy asks questions and you have the answers, and you're convinced that your answers are right because he tells you they're right because you guys are in agreement. So for me, looking at that story, I'm certainly glad that you found some sort of connection, because that's important. But what we have is a couple of people read a book and came away with a similar understanding of it. Now, this isn't remarkable at all. The bulk of Christianity, despite over thousands of different denominations, the bulk of them agree on the bulk of it. It doesn't take some grand teacher or spiritual wisdom. A good chunk of it is relatively face value. There's some things that are confusing and some things where we can disagree about whether or not it's metaphorical or whatever. But nothing about that is remarkable. Certainly not to the extent that you should consider it good reason to believe that it's true.
I do. I understand where you're coming from.
I'm not quite sure that you do, and I don't mean that insulting. Let me see if I can clarify this. You mentioned Bart Ehrman and Mike Licona. Now, I've been on stage with both of them, and you talk about them both being good historians. I don't think that that's true. Mike Licona doesn't understand skepticism, doesn't understand evidence, and basically argues for the supernatural because somebody reported that a trash can lid moved across the room, or they saw a ghost, or they got money. Doesn't understand. Yeah, you laughed. I did the debate with him on the resurrection, and this is the case that he presented.
Did you really say that?
Yes. Google my name and Mike Licona, and you can watch the entire debate. Now, that's not somebody who understands standards of evidence. However, what Mike or Bart has to say about this is irrelevant. The issue is you became convinced that there's a God for some reason, and I'm still trying to find out what that reason is so that I can figure out whether or not you have a good reason, and then maybe I can believe as well, or if you have a bad reason, and I can point out what the problem is. Because my job here is never to prove God doesn't exist. It's to address people's reasons and acknowledge if they're good or object if they're not.
I can tell you. I'll tell you the reason why I do believe God exists. I'll clear this up right now. What I would, little introduction. Like I said before, I have doubted my faith, and I didn't see God, stuff like that. I started to doubt him because hardship. But what happened one time was, this is the reason why I have undoubtable, shakable faith that God is real, is because when I was in high school, when I was in swimming class, and it was a free day, nobody, they didn't have to swim, they could do whatever they wanted, and nobody was in the pool but me. And I really couldn't swim, and the pool was built weird. The deeper the pool got, the higher the edge got. So when I could reach up, touch the edge barely with my fingertips. And I don't know if you ever heard of weird pools that are like that, but mine, that was. And I thought I'd, be a little brave and try to swim in the deep end. And I started struggling. And I said, help me. I wasn't yelling it, but I was saying it in a normal voice. And I thought people would come for me. The next thing I know, I'm under the water, and I'm looking up at the surface as it's getting farther away. And I'm just it's very surreal to me. I'm I'm going to drown. I'm going to die. No one's coming for me. And no one did come for me. Nobody jumped in the water and saved me. What happened was I felt this force underneath me pushed me up and over the edge of the pool. I mean, more than half of my body was over the edge of the pool. And when I turned around, because I thought maybe somebody swam underneath me and pushed me out, turned around, looked in the water, there was nobody there. And then I remember I almost lost consciousness, and nobody was coming for me. And I just how do I go from being under the water to over the edge of the pool when it was so high, when I couldn't even touch the edge of it? I mean, it was so high. It was it defies physics or something. And I know it's kind of strange, but
Barbara, first, let me start by saying that I'm glad you're safe. That's the most important. I really am. I'm glad that you escaped. How do you know it was God and not perhaps, for the sake of argument, the ghost of someone on your family tree who died long ago, who was there, who came and lifted you out of the water? How do you make the distinction between one or the other?
You mean whether it was God or a loved one that saved me?
The ghost of a loved one or some other force. How did you get to God? This specific God with a proper name, to be honest.
Jesus, Holy Spirit.
How did you get from, there was a force, there's something I cannot explain, and I found myself on the side of the pool, rescued and alive. How did you get from the force to Jesus?
Well, I felt, like I said, I felt something underneath me, and then when I was out of the pool, I felt there was a presence there. It didn't feel like a bad presence. I felt calming and relaxing, and it's I knew.
Okay, benevolent presence. I get that. How did you get from benevolent presence to Jesus?
I don't. Well, he made him. I know it sounds kind of strange, but he made himself. He makes himself known to me. He speaks to me in my spirit. And I know there's a difference between, because a lot of Christians misunderstand your own thoughts, your own feelings. You think so, but it's actually just feelings in your heart. And then there's in your spirit. You have to decipher which ones is which, or you're just going to think everything's really there when it's not. I just felt like he was telling me it was him that saved me, and I try so hard when later on down the line when I could actually swim, I actually tried debunking that, thinking it was just the force of the water that did it. I did everything I could to try to debunk that, and I couldn't do it. So I just really believe that God was the one that did it, because I was thinking logically. I was like, okay,
No.
maybe, huh?
No, I get the impression. I understand why you're thinking this. Seth's point is, even if we were to accept the story, which frankly I have issues with, I'm willing to accept that you are honestly relaying the story as accurately as you can. But there's a number of variables. There's a number of things that don't make sense. There's also a number of variables involved, especially if you're drowning and your brain's being deprived of oxygen. How accurate you're going to be in actually remembering the events. But with setting all that aside, at the end of the day, you are convinced that something happened to you, something for which we don't apparently have an explanation, and yet you are convinced that the explanation is Jesus because that's what you feel.
Right.
Now, if that's the case, then you haven't, first of all, I'd say you haven't actually been presented with sufficient evidence to justify your conclusion. But then you have to answer another question. And that is, you have to look at this from not just my perspective or an outsider's perspective, but this, you were in trouble and you asked for help, and Jesus came and pulled you out of the pool. And then provided you with no other evidence that you could relay to anybody. But he convinced you and made you feel that he was there and he was with you, and it was, you said, unshakable, undeniable, unquestionable, whatever it was, that this is the case. Why are you so special that you get this and nobody else does?
I do. I asked him all. Well, I mean, he's done. I mean, he saved me other times from really.
Okay, he's never saved me when I needed it. Why not?
Right.
And if you're in good with him, can't you just ask him and he can tell you?
Actually, if you're in good with him, could he have not caught you before you fell in the pool?
That'd be nice.
That's a whole other thing. So,
I've asked him plenty of times.
Do you get any answers?
Yes, I have actually gotten answers.
What are the answers?
Well, the simple one that he would normally give me is, "I love you."
So he doesn't love me. I thought he loved everybody.
I mean, he does. I think, to be quite honest, and I'm just going to be real with you, I think God mostly saves people if he has reasons to keep them alive. I know that sounds like something a Christian wouldn't say, but to be quite honest, I think God saves people only if he's going to use you for something.
Okay. So, what's it going to use you for?
Well, I do believe that he wants me to spread his word around, be a witness.
So he let you fall. He let you fall in a pool and nearly drown, so that he could save you, so you could tell people about the time you fell in a pool and almost drowned.
Yes.
God, what a dick! Yeah, what an absolute dick! If he wants people to know that he's real and exists, why would he have to nearly kill you and save you in order to get that message across?
To be quite honest, I think God is crazy. I tell him that I say, God, you are crazy. I call him an asshole. Trust me, I don't cover it up.
I hope he's not listening.
I don't pretend I'm happy.
He's not getting in the endorsement I think he was hoping for. You. I'm also a little bit struck by the fact that you are now the survivor, gone to share your experience with us, and yet your own Bible says in 2 Timothy that you are forbidden to teach or instruct us or exert authority over us in any way. The Bible has disqualified you because you are a female. The truth is that it is we, the atheists, who are giving you the forum that your own Bible and Christian faith has not.
I thought that in the Bible, what was her name? Sarah? She was a queen, right? Or was it Ruth?
No, that's Abraham's wife. Is Sarah.
Oh, but yeah, like God used this female to do something. I mean,
but you're not allowed to. You're not allowed to be this evangelist that you pretend to be. You're not allowed to go out and, at least in terms of half the population of planet Earth, you're not qualified according to God's New Testament law. So how do you reconcile that? I don't mean to drag the call on and on. I mean, I realize we need to move on, but I'm just curious. If the Bible mutes your voice, how do you jive that with being on the switchboard today?
You know, that's the thing. I'm a sinner. I don't always do what I'm supposed to do.
I'm pretty sure you're not supposed to call God an asshole.
It's not the first time. It's not the first time.
Yeah,
I think that's the first commandment there, but I'm not.
And that's
Or actually, be the second.
I got nothing else. I got nothing.
I do love
So
God.
here's the thing.
What?
Here's the thing, and I'll let you go after this, and you can think about this.
Okay.
You have to try to think about this and from the standpoint of, does it make sense? So my temptation is normally to ask somebody in your situation, if you were God, would you operate this way? Would you intentionally make it so that somebody's about to drown so that you could rescue them so that they could tell their story? I'm not going to ask you that question because you already acknowledged that you think that's a dick move to do.
Yeah.
Here's the better question. You think that whether or not God's an asshole, he did this so that you would have a story to tell, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Why on earth would God give you a story that is devoid of evidence, that is completely unconvincing, and have you call into an atheist show to expose the fact that there's insufficient evidence, that this shouldn't be convincing? Your God, not according to your model, not only dumped your ass in the pool and then saved you from it, but he did it to give you a story that cannot achieve the very thing that you think the story should achieve.
You do have a point there. Maybe God doesn't want me to share it with you.
I don't know, but you can ask him and he can tell you, right?
Oh, kitten, don't do that. Sure.
That was Jesus. He's very
Jesus
upset.
is messing with your
very
cat.
agitated.
So ask God what he wants you to tell the story. Ask God what he wants you to do with that story. Ask God if he has any message for us. And then you can call back and tell us what God said.
I can do that. Thank you, Matt. I really admire you a lot.
Thank you, Barbara. I appreciate it.
I'm right here. I'm right here. What am I, chopped liver, Barbara?